We're going to start things off with a look at how you use the Ellipse tool inside of Illustrator, which allows you to draw regular ovals as well as circles. I'm working inside a file called bigstargraphic.ai found inside the O5 Shapes folder. And what I'm going to do is right-click inside of the document window and choose Show Guides. So we can see a few guides that I've set up in advance. All of these guides, by the way, are contained inside the Guides layer. So if you open up the Layers panel and twirl open that Guides layer, that is, click on the little triangle to expand it, you'll see that we have a series of grouped guides labeled 1 through 4. And right now we can only see Guides 1, but we'll be turning that off and turning on 2 and 3 and 4 later. It's just that it's fairly confusing to have them all turned on at the same time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drag along those eyeballs to turn them off. So I'm just seeing Guides 1. And then I'm going to scroll up a little bit and click on the drawing layer to make it active. And I'm also going to turn off the layer called Shapes by clicking on its eyeball so that we have a clean slate to work with. So in other words, we're seeing only that piece of artwork that we created in the previous chapter and nothing more. Now, if you're working along with me, I'd like you to go ahead and select the Ellipse tool, which is the third tool in here inside of this floating toolbox. If you're working from the standard toolbox, you'd click and hold on the rectangle tool or one of the other shape tools and select the third tool down here in the flyout menu. Now, there's a variety of ways to use the Ellipse tool, and I'm going to show you every one of them in this movie. First of all, you can drag essentially from corner to corner. In other words, the ellipse fits inside of the area described by your drag because that drag area is the bounding box. So if I drag over to the right here, I'll create a wide but short ellipse. If I drag down further like so, then I'll create a tall but narrow ellipse. If I want to create a circle, then I'll press and hold the Shift key. And it's very important that you keep that Shift key down if you want a circle until after you release the mouse button. If you first release the Shift key and then release the mouse button, you'll end up with an ellipse. Also, by the way, and this one can be very, very useful because it's difficult to anticipate exactly where an ellipse is going to land on the page. You can press and hold the space bar as you drag in order to move that ellipse to a different location. And that's the exact same technique we used with the spiral tool in the previous chapter, but it works with all of the line and shape tools as well. All right, so what I'd like you to do where this graphic is concerned, I'll go ahead and release my mouse button and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac in order to get rid of that shape. I want you to drag from one guide intersection to the opposite guide intersection like so. So I don't care if you drag down and to the right like I am, or down and to the left, or up and to the right. Any way you want to work is just fine. And that way we'll create the initial ellipse that we're looking for. So as you can see, these guides describe the bounding box into which the ellipse fits. That's very important when you're using the tool because that's not the only way to work. Let me show you a different way. I'm going to go over to my Layers panel here, and I'm going to turn off Guides 1. So it's important that you have the Guides layer expanded. And then I'll turn on Guides 2 so that we have a different section of guides going. Let's say you would prefer that the beginning and end of your drag actually occur on the ellipse. So rather than having the ellipse fit inside of a bounding box, the ellipse is better described by your actual drag. So, for example, if I begin dragging from this point like so, so one of the guide intersections once again to the opposite guide intersection, notice right now that that beginning of my drag is not actually anywhere on the ellipse. However, if during my drag I press and hold the Control key or the Command key on the Mac, notice now that the guide intersection actually occurs on the ellipse. So this is the Control key on the PC or the Command key on the Mac. Again, you need to keep that key down the entire time you're dragging. Then go ahead and release the mouse button and then release the key. Now notice that the bounding box fits inside of the ellipse as opposed to outside. So basically, you can work either way. You can choose your poison here. A lot of folks feel better by creating an ellipse inside of the bounding box, what I call the corner-to-corner method, even though obviously an ellipse does not have any corners. Other folks prefer for their drag points to actually occur on the outline of the ellipse. One more way to work, and I'm going to turn off Guides 2, by the way, and I'm going to turn on Guides 3. You can drag from the center outward. if you so desire. And you do that by dragging like so. And as you drag, press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and then drag outward. And what you want is an ellipse that basically aligns at the bottom. So all three of our ellipses should align right there at the bottom point, as you can see on screen. You want to keep that Alt or Option key down throughout your drag if you want to create the ellipse from the center outward. And then go ahead and release the mouse button, and then, of course, release the key. And, of course, if you're feeling particularly ambitious, you can use all of these keyboard tricks at the same time. So if I were to begin dragging at a point here, I could press this Shift key in order to constrain the shape to a perfect circle. I could press the Alt or Option key in order to create the ellipse from the center out. I could press and hold the Control key or the Command key in order to ensure that the end of my drag occurs somewhere on the outline of the shape. Now, because the Shift key is also down, it may vary a little bit because Illustrator's trying to make sure that you're creating a perfect circle at the same time. But it bears mentioning that I now have all of the modifier keys down. That is Control, Shift, and Alt on the PC, Command, Shift, and Option on the Mac. And then if I have a spare pinky and I want to press the space bar as well, then I can go ahead and move that shape on the fly. So there you have it. That's the ellipse tool. I'll go ahead and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of that shape. A seemingly powerful tool. However, you have an awful lot of ways to get exactly the results you're looking for.